You've tuned into INVISIYOUTH Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the INVISIYOUTH Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of stigma breaking, empowerment building, humor filling life hacks for all of the medically adultish people in your life. I'm your host, Dominique Vale, founder of INVISIYOUTH Charity, and today is a special episode because it is our first for us. This is the last episode of our first themed group of shows for the INVISIYOUTH Chat Sessions. So, like you all know, the past now 6 episodes have been all about invisible illnesses and mental health, building empowerment and providing lifestyle tips and management tools for all of you living daily life with invisible illnesses and mental health challenges. So we're so excited to be able to continue providing all of this content for you. And hopefully you guys have been able to learn from all of our guests across the States, Canada, and England. And today is like I said, it's our 6th and final episode of this group of themed shows, and I could not be more excited to introduce our guests to you guys, because I'm saying guests is plural because it is another first for INVISIYOUTH Chat Sessions. We're not having only one, but 2 guests on the show. They are both from a UK nonprofit called The Mix. So this is Zoe Bailie and Françoise Facella, which are both from, like I had mentioned, The Mix. This is a leading UK charity for providing support for young people on all of the factors that can challenge one's life, and all of these challenges oftentimes can affect someone's mental health. Through their free and multi-channel services like articles and videos, in-person and virtual counseling services, The Mix makes the connections to provide tools and support for all young adults facing any challenges that life throws at them. And for us, we know that this is super important because a lot of young people that are living with chronic illnesses and disabilities, they really need to be able to have these sort of tools and connective networks so they can be able to continue to empower themselves through life. And The Mix is really one of these empowering and key factor nonprofits that we're so excited that we get to know and work with. So I'm going to introduce to you guys again Zoe Bailie and Françoise Facella from The Mix. So hi guys, how are you?
Hi, hello. Very well. How are you?
Doing really well, thank you. So I know I gave sort of like a cliff noted version to all of our listeners and viewers about The Mix and the 2 of you, but I'm gonna give you guys over the mic for a little so you both can introduce yourselves, your jobs at The Mix, and then tell more people about the fantastic work that you guys do every day.
Yeah, sure. So hello, hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, because we have been really excited about joining this series, and thanks to Dominique for inviting us as well. So as Dominique said, The Mix, we're a multi-channel support service. We support about 3 million under 25s in the UK, and that's every year. So we do that through a real variety of sources and channels. We have about 2,000 articles online on our website, which is themix.org.uk. We have a telephone helpline. We have chat rooms, message boards, and a telephone counselling service. So any way that you want to come and get information, get support, get signposting to other support services as well, then that's a big part of what The Mix does. So, there really is something for everybody, and everybody does seek that sort of information in quite different ways. We know that, we've learned that. So we want to provide a totally holistic service to young people. We want to be able to connect young people together to support each other. Peer-to-peer support is a massive part of what we do as well, so everyone can get involved, know that they're helping one another at the same time as getting some information and support themselves. And we deal with any subject, anything. There are no taboos at all at The Mix, no taboos. Sex and relationships, drugs and alcohol, mental health, work and study, absolutely anything goes. And we do not... We don't tell people what to do, and I think that's really, really important part of The Mix. We're not judgmental at all. We take everything on board. We accept everyone's experiences, and we hope that people will share their experiences, good and bad, to empower others to tell their stories too. So that's just sort of a little bit more about what we do. And I am the Director of Brand at The Mix.
And yeah, I'm Françoise, and I'm the communication and event officer at the Mix. I think you explained very well what we do, and I think what really is important for us is that kind of the sense of community that we offer to young people, for young people to kind of like meet wherever they are in the UK or even in the world, actually, because we do reach 3 million young people in the UK, but there's about 8 million all over the world accessing the Mix every year, which is quite impressive. And it's all about creating those connections between people that might share the same experience or might want to know a bit more about something that they're experiencing, and find this kind of like direct support from someone who's just been there or, you know, has learned from that experience. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we always really love with the Mix, is that not only across the UK, the youth that come and work with INVISIYOUTH, we don't have to worry about geographically where they're at. They can really access the Mix anywhere. And then the youth that we have working in other countries too, because your website is such a resource, it's really been fantastic for us to be able to shine a light on the work that you're doing and have youth in all of the countries we work in be able to see how you're able to really support one another, because that's a big thing of what we're focusing on in this episode, and the work that you guys focus on as well as we do at INVISIYOUTH is really the outside factors that really can affect somebody's mental health. And because of what we work with in physical and mental health for young adults, it's really the non-medical side of life, which is a lot of outside factors of just their day-to-day. So that's been really fantastic. And on a side note, I always say that we like to work with charities that young adults would find really cool, and just in a general, they are really one of the charities that our teenagers will say is the coolest charities they get to work with, and have some of the best social media campaigns, which later on in the show they'll get to tell you a little bit about one of their summer campaigns they have going on. And so that's a little sneak peek for you guys to stay until the end of the hour to hear about their new campaign they have going on. That's really just is an epitome of why I think they're just really cool people. So kind of going of course. So going off of that, we're going to start off in our very first segment of the show. So I'm excited to get Zoe and Françoise to start off with our first one, which is called Break That Glass Ceiling.
Break that glass ceiling.
Break that glass ceiling.
All right, guys, with Break That Glass Ceiling, you know this is where we take our theme, which is with today, young adult mental health, and we incorporate it with the Mix and their mission to get talking about topics that usually often are deemed taboo or under-discussed and stigmatized. So we will really be chatting about the stigmas that young people face in their day-to-day sort of life struggles and mental health struggles, and talking about why these stigmas tend to be a problem, and then ways that we can really crack that ceiling open to open minds. So sort of starting off with more of a broad question, what do you guys think are some of the biggest stigmas that young adults face sort of in their daily life or even in the mental health conversation?
Yeah, I think I think there are a huge variety of stigmas actually, and I think that many of them are about being judged, whether it's about your mental health, your physical health, the way you look, the way you talk, the way your opinions, and I think it's very hard actually sometimes for young people not to be beaten down, particularly by media. For example, there's lots of very, very negative media about young people, lots of assumptions. Usually they are wrong. And, whether that's about always being on social media or not getting a job, being lazy, or all of those different things. And actually, we know that if there's a job out there, a young person's going to get it. And if there isn't a job, they will create their own. Yeah. And that's why, young people are so entrepreneurial. So they're breaking down that stigma by themselves, and we're just hopefully encouraging them to do that and to be brave enough to do that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you're young, you really want to fit in, not particularly being, with the coolest and more beautiful, richest guys in school. That's not what I'm talking about, but kind of like finding your group, finding your peer, and maybe struggling with your mental health if it's something that no one talks about. That's extremely isolating. So that's why I think at the Mix we've been really campaigning for the last 2 years to just try make people talk about mental health. I think that's why this is such an important issue for us, and it always comes down to talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more you know about mental health, the less you feel isolated because you're suffering from, a bad episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of going off of what you both said too, we've always said we always are curious if people think it's sort of a little leans more one way or the other with the idea of that fear or judgment of sort of addressing a topic that they think that sort of has affected their life in any sort of capacity. And do you feel like that judgment sort of is fear of how other people will perceive them, or is it more like an internal judgment on themselves of not wanting to be dealing with sort of a struggle in their own life personally, or do you feel like it's twofold for a lot of young adults?
Twofold, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's twofold. Yeah, I think one thing can build the other. So if you have a bad experience about communicating about your mental health with somebody, they don't respond in the way that you expected, or they respond in a very negative way, actually that really puts the barriers up again, and then you could start judging yourself. Are they right? Are they right? I really do have this problem. And actually that, I think, then stops the communication that the person has been so brave enough to start. So I really think it's both things.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think if you don't understand what's going on in your life, if you're having a bad moment and you never learned about that could happen for you, that you never learned about mood swings, you never learned about depression, anxiety, or other problems with your mental health, and that happens to you, that can be really scary. I think. And you don't know how to talk about this, and you feel very lonely with it. So that's one thing, but also maybe feeling that you're a bit weird for having that and not feeling comfortable talking about those things with other people, because that's just something we don't talk about. It's very much, it's linked really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know one thing that we'll always say to a lot of the young adults that come in that deal with physical illness or disability is that they sort of bring up what we call as like the burden word is sort of always thrown around, is whatever it's lifestyle struggles or their physical health struggles, they always will say, well, I already have so many family members and friends that ask about how my health is doing, or doctor's appointments, or they come with me to therapy programs, whether it's physical therapy or adaptive therapy. They say, well, then if I'm starting to be affected mentally and emotionally with my illnesses or disabilities, I don't want to put more burdens on other people. So then they choose not to say anything, where then it goes on the flip side with their support systems that they say, well, they don't want to say the wrong thing to somebody. They don't want to, as they say, they don't want to trigger a conversation that might upset them. So then because similar to what you both have said, is that it sort of becomes very isolating because nobody wants to say the wrong thing or start affecting other people in more of an upsetting way. So then it becomes very much like a quiet conversation that no one talks about. But what you guys like to do is really sort of like take that initiative to ask people to talk more openly about it with themselves and with others and peers. And really, as you guys have even noticed too, in sort of cracking that ceiling open, is when one person sort of even casually mentions the conversation of something gives them anxiety, or if they have a moment of stress or they're having struggles with certain aspects of their life, whether it's socially or financially, it seems that people are so hungry to have those conversations. Wouldn't you feel that way? Because then other people tend to then want to open up themselves and go, oh, I can relate to that because this is what's happening to me, or I have a friend that feels that way too.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's what's important about our service being anonymous as well. Completely anonymous service, which means that those conversations actually can be a lot easier. You're in a place that's safe. You're in a place where your anonymity is protected, and if anything does go the way that that you don't want it to, then our moderators, the mixed moderators and staff, will sort of step in and support. But actually, generally, I think you're quite right. Once that conversation has started, it just evolves quite quickly. And I think, especially in the digital environment, it appears to encourage conversations to happen much quicker. So in the real world, you can be talking about, it can take a few meetings, a few different conversations to get to the point that you actually want to get to the thing you want to talk about. Whereas online, actually, it turns over really quickly. And certainly our counselling team say they get through a lot more in a counselling session on the chat rooms or on the telephone than they do in real life, in a one-to-one environment. And that's really, really interesting, I think, the different ways that people choose to communicate and to talk about their mental health and to tell their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that's sort of a strong way that you guys, and then sort of telling other people of how they can break down these stigmas of mental health struggles is the way that you really do provide like a variety of options of how you can communicate and gain access to support, especially talking about mental health? Like, what are strong ways that you feel that have been working in terms of challenging the stigmas on that conversation?
Well, we've seen that when we talk with people that have quite a high profile and they agree to share their stories and they become ambassadors of the cause, and they're very open about their own struggles, and they're just like, yeah, I've been there, done that, I'm just like anyone else, it happens to anyone. That really helps young people, or anyone really, but specifically young people, to recognize that they're not alone and it can happen to anyone. So that was something when we worked with Heads Together and the Royal Family in the UK, that really helped. And then we had loads and loads of young celebrities actually coming out with, mental health stories, which were really empowering for people to hear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know I was going to see when you guys were going to actually bring that up too, is because of that campaign that you were involved in. There were so many high profile people, like you mentioned, talking about their mental health and the different struggles that they've dealt with. And it is that, I think, has been one of the biggest ways that young adults have started to feel comfortable, because even just seeing a lot of the youth that come in through the charity with their physical illnesses or disabilities starting to continue to post or talk about different celebrities or athletes that have addressed sort of their mental health struggles, it's allowed them to sort of have a more of an anonymous window of opportunity to figure out where they can gain access of support, see the different types that have been out there, and then have somebody that they've emulated from a career path and be able to see how they've supported themselves. And obviously, in some ways, they have access to different resources that the everyday person doesn't. But it's been, for us, that was really wonderful to see how many people of high profile across the UK and even internationally. I know you had quite a few Americans that came into the Heads Together campaign and provided support to it as well, that it really opened up international media conversations about providing support to those that are struggling, and then just having supporters as well, just sort of saying, we should step up, we should do better. I shouldn't put all the pressure on family members or friends that are struggling to ask for support. I should just act as common sense and see how everybody's doing themselves. And I think that was a big way we saw a lot of stigmas breaking down, was those who aren't struggling as well realizing that they had a job in a way of ending the stigmas too, even though it wasn't firsthand experience that they were dealing with.
Yeah, you don't get much bigger than Lady Gaga in a telephone conversation with Prince William, right? Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I feel I don't need to tell people that are listening or watching who those two people are. I think that's universal. We don't have to describe them. I think that's good. Those names can just explain themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we'll just end talking about Prince William and Lady Gaga on that segment, and we'll go to our second segment then with this one. So our second segment we're going to talk about is called Health Hack Moments.
Health Hack Moments.
Okay, guys, with this segment is one of our newer ones, Health Hack Moments. We really focus on all of the different types of health awareness and lifestyle tips for young adults so they can improve their daily life. So we can talk about ways they can combat mental health struggles, ways they can ask for help, and outlets for support that are a little more adaptive and unique than what sort of our mainstream therapy. So going off of what you guys do so often, what are some quick ways that you've seen works for young adults that want to improve their sort of daily mental health?
Well, I think for me, the most important thing is to spot the signs of potential crisis. So obviously, usually when people are aware of their mental health, it's because they're not well, but they haven't recognized that up until they're really, really bad and they have to deal with it. So obviously, deal with the crisis. and do whatever you need to do for that. It could be talking to a friend, talking to a therapist, actually exploring the issue and really digging into it. But once you start to see the light again and start to get better, it's very much about spotting the sign and very much taking care of yourself on a daily basis. So not thinking that, oh, I'm okay now, I've done my therapy, it's all good, let's not talk about this anymore, I don't really want to talk about it. It's more about, I'm aware that that could happen, that could potentially happen again, and I'm okay with that, so I'm going to take care of me. And I think that's really important, and I think that maybe that's something people don't do that often, because once they're in the crisis, that's all you think about, you want to get rid of it, and fair enough, it's pretty bad. But once you get better, it's very much about, okay, I've been there, don't really want to go back there. So what can I do every day to be careful and maybe really take care of myself and not allow that to go as bad as it did?
I think that's really a good point, actually. We ignore things for a long time, and then it creeps up on us, and before we know it, there's a crisis of some kind. But I think maybe we do encourage people to keep diaries, so that you can keep on top of your mental well-being, and actually to sort of put things behind that as well. It's, what exercise did I do today? Who did I speak to today? What did I eat today? Did I really look after myself? Did I take care of myself? But also not to beat yourself up when the days that you don't do that. That diary is not meant to shame anybody. It's actually meant to encourage you to see good days from bad days and actually what influenced them. And if you eat popcorn and chocolate all day on one day and don't go outside and don't speak to anybody, and then that's okay as well, but watch that that's not a pattern. So those kind of things around the whole person. We're a very holistic charity. We want to consider the whole person, because we know that there is a link between being able to do physical exercise if you can, and actually what that does to your mental health in return. And actually that we know all of those things, but sometimes that's not possible for everybody as well. So what do you then do as the thing that can trigger those positive endorphins and make yourself feel good? So I think it's very, very different for everybody.
Definitely. I think you need to know yourself, learn to know yourself, which is a big thing. Know yourself. We never really fully know ourselves, but as best as we can, at least know what is actually a pleasure from something that you do to hide your issues. So I don't know, some people might stay in bed and watch TV all day because they're hiding from the external world. Some people might do that because they just need to reset and just need a quiet day at home, and that'll be fine. So there's no kind of like magic recipe on you should do this, you should do that. I think you should just know what's good for you, and indulge a little bit, have a little bit of fun, and take care of yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I loved what you were both saying as well, because it just sort of takes, we had a guest that said, I just think people just need to be kinder to themselves and not put so much pressure to, if they're sort of going through the process and improving their health on a daily basis, whether that's physical or mental health, if they do have a day where they would deem it sort of a setback in the process, it doesn't have to then become 7 days of setbacks. You can just sort of take each day as it is and go, okay, today I gave myself a bit of a break from in the improvement process, so then tomorrow I can sort of start again, and just being kinder to yourself and not so hard on yourself, like I know you were both saying. So I know that is really really strong advice on that end. So and also kind of going off of that, do you guys feel that it sort of works differently in terms of strengthening your own mental health, or even strengthening yourself as a whole person so they can tackle these struggles that life brings on, whether you're in different environments? Because I know you guys, also similar to us, we work with lots of age brackets. So whether they're still in school or university, or now they're in the workforce, or even if they're out with friends, do you think that sort of depending on the environment that you're in, there's different ways that you can sort of take a personal moment for yourself if you feel like you're having struggles with what's going on, whether the environment is different?
Yeah, certainly. I think I know what you mean. I mean, we know that there are times when we should be encouraging some of our the young people that we work with to get in the real world, get off their phones, get off their devices, and actually spend time with a friend or doing something that's more sociable. And then there are times when actually we encourage people to get on their devices to get support, because if you're in a positive and safe space online, then that's incredibly powerful as well. You know, there are obviously some more harmful spaces online, but we hope that, you know, some of the tools and apps that we build at the Mix can help with things as well. So we have an app called Stress Heads, which allows you to sort of take control of your own stress levels and monitor them, and it's sort of gamified, so you can make your stress, or the thing that is causing you stress, whether that's relationships or money or school, or, you know, whatever environment you're in, to your point about people being at different stages and different environments, and you can make it into a character. You can diarize how you feel at certain times using it as a little slider, and then you can also really punch it.
I love that.
Really punch that stress on your phone or your tablet. And you know, we've had really good feedback about, actually, if you can make something quite personal to yourself, no matter what situation that you're in, and then you take control of it, that's really empowering as well.
I just had a visual of seeing a bunch of our teenagers like aggressively tapping their screens on their phones and just being like, "Oh, I'm just beating my stress. Don't worry about it." So that's just amazing. That actually is so fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick thing on the whole empowering, like being stronger and feeling stronger. I think anything that you go through in life, it will make you stronger, because you're dealing with it and you're going through something that will transform you. It could be physical health problem or mental health problem, whatever. As long as you're dealing with it and, you know, you're going through something that is already making you stronger. And I know there's a lot of talks in this, you know, this world that we're living of, like, you need to be your best self, you need to be the strongest person, and you need to be, you know, like this superpower, superwoman, superman at all time. But like, people need to understand that they are already super strong, because they are dealing with an issue, and this is so much strength is needed to do that. So, like, as you said before, I think young people really need to give them a break and give themselves a break and be really kind with what they're going through and how they deal with themselves, because they are amazing, absolutely, doing all those things and actually, you know, tackling issues. It's amazing.
And what you see online isn't always what real life is, and there's no need to compare your life and yourself to that either. Absolutely. Which you know, is a lot of what we are talking about in our summer campaign.
Even going off the Superman analogy, you know, even Clark Kent sometimes had to take off the cape and put on glasses and a tie and just go to work at the newspaper. So even he had to not always be a superhuman all the time. He had to sometimes just take it back a little bit, going off of that analogy. But even one thing that we'll always sort of encourage in terms of sort of a recharge or a reboot moment as sort of a lifestyle tip is, we always will say, well, just take a break wherever you're at, whether you're in a classroom and you just need to take a break and walk to the bathroom, take a few seconds and then come back in, take a lap in the hallways, whether you're at work, taking your lunch break. We always say sort of taking those breaks are a really good way of just sort of taking a recharge instead of feeling sort of confined and forced to, I have to sit at my desk, I need to do work. 60 seconds isn't going to jeopardize sort of your work potential the entire day. So we'll say if you take those 60 seconds just to walk up, change your scenery, walk back, it'll give you enough of a time to sort of recharge, calm down a little bit, and then be able to continue moving forward in more of a productive manner too. So that's always been a big way that we've been sort of able to say on the daily basis for young adults, is just how to tackle those struggles when they feel like it just keeps building up, as they say, as the day goes on more and more.
For sure. And I think having the strength to actually ask for a break, or actually, you know, tell your teacher, actually, I need 10 minutes now, I need to go, you know, give me 5 minutes. It's actually a really big strength, because you have, at that point, you have already recognized the sign of potentially something that could happen down the line that would be, you know, way worse than just ask for 10 minutes. So that's a massive strength. And also you have the strength to actually ask and potentially challenge the authority and say, well, you know, like, right now I need to do this. And I think there's still a hell of a lot of education to do, especially in schools or even in businesses, for employers to actually recognize them when an employee or, you know, a student is asking for a 10 minutes break. It's not because they're lacking or they're slacking. It's just because they need that to then keep going for the rest of the day.
Yeah, the amount of pride that we'll feel when we'll have any of our young adults that are in university classes be able to like forward a screenshot of an email they sent a professor a week before a deadline on a paper, and they'll say, I'm really just going through a lot mentally and I just need to have, would one extra day be okay? And the amount of times we see professors go, if you need that extra day, that's fine. And they've been able to really be supportive of their students. Those are like the best moments when we see professors really just sort of take the analogy of a mental health day quite seriously and go, okay, you need an extra day from the deadline. That's fine. I know you'll be able to provide me your best work if you actually have an extra day for yourself. So that really is, when you do, like you had said, the educational system, those systems that you work in, the workforce as well, when they're able to really then provide that sort of support as well, it makes both ends. You're able to get better work and quality done, and then also people feel that they're being supported in all environments that they're in too. So that is a really good thing that you had suggested as well. Yeah, so we're going to end our health hacks moment segment. We're going to go into our next one where I'm going to see if I'm going to be able to make our two guests laugh a bit, considering the title is called Empower with Laughter.
Empower with Laughter.
One of our newer segments. So Empower with Laughter, we go through how young adults should be able to get empowered while living with any sort of health struggles or life struggles, but finding the laughter in those moments. People always say that laughter is the best medicine and the best remedy, but they usually don't tell you how to incorporate laughter in your daily life. So that's what we're going to be doing with our guests, is figuring out how to get motivated, how to laugh in the face of the worst things and never really fitting in the box of normal. So kind of going right off of that, I know a big thing we'll hear from supporters is they'll say, I don't want to make light of a situation that my friends or family members are going through, but I just feel like they need to lighten up a bit, is the quote that they'll use, or I want to make them laugh or make them smile, but I don't want to then make light of the situation. So how do you suggest that a lot of the support networks of young people can find ways to encourage good days, good moments, and laughter with those that they may be struggling?
I think it's all about timing and the circumstances that you're in. And if you know someone well enough, you kind of know what's a good time to make a joke and what's not, and what to joke about and what not to joke about. But we know definitely that humour can actually create a conversation or create a bond between people as well. So often, because we do a lot of outreach through our social media channels, and can reach quite a different audience through that as well, so that we want as many people to know the mix exists as possible.
Yeah.
And we often go about that with quite a light-hearted way to talk about subjects that potentially, can be quite upsetting or worrying. But it makes it easier in a way for people to engage with those subjects, because it's not about the crisis. It's not about this situation is so bad that I don't want to be near it. I can't deal with that. I don't know what to do with that. And actually, we often bring them back into the website or into our services and into the support that they really need through that light-hearted touch, through engaging with a joke, a nice graphic, those different things. So I think in the real world, those conversations can happen in the same way. You can start a conversation by something lighthearted, and actually before you know it, you've made you've engaged with somebody, and they're trusting you and talking to you about all kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're quite good at this in the UK. We tend to use humor a hell of a lot, especially talking about the worst things. We tend to laugh about it and then have the serious conversation. But I think I totally agree when you said it's all about timing and also context, and depending who makes the joke on what. And my mom always used to say, you don't laugh about something or someone, you laugh with someone. So it's all about that. It's about making the situation a bit lighter. It's about stealing a little smile to your friends or something like that, rather than making fun of them. So that's a very quite easy and clear differentiation, but I think sometimes people tend to kind of get it confused. But yeah, I think laughing is a great medicine. It's also a great way to kind of like distress If you can laugh a few minutes a day, you definitely feel better. And it can be just laughing around with your friends, but it can also be watching a cool YouTube video or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely good for your mental health as well to laugh.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love how, Zoe, I know you had mentioned it too, is sort of the style in which like your friend likes to discuss topics. That sort of is, you want to, in sociology, it's more like a mirroring technique. So how if somebody's more sarcastic and that's how they talk about their health or stressful situations, if you're going to then be supportive and want to bring a little humor to them, you kind of want to mirror the way that they address humor, whether they are more punchlines or they like different types of humor that they might have. You kind of want to mirror the way that they make their own jokes instead of coming, I'm very sarcastic, which is probably why I think everyone in the UK is very funny all the time. If I have friends of mine who are not very sarcastic, they get very confused when I try to bring humor to my medical situations with my chronic illnesses and injuries. They get very confused when I make light of different medical scenarios that I've had, where I'll always then say to them, well, I've always been taught by my doctors that in the long run of memories of what I've gone through that were very traumatic times, I can look back on some of the most traumatic moments and I have the most humorous thoughts through those moments because I would try to find how, as I always say, how horrible the situation got that I just started to laugh at how bad it was. And then years later, I can still think back on that really traumatic doctor's visit or surgery that I had, and I will remember it while I'm laughing because that's the only way my memory connects with it. So we'll always encourage people to, when a situation feels so horrible, try and find the way that you have to laugh at how bad something has gotten, because then you're sort of, like you both had mentioned, putting a little spark of humor into something that's more traumatic and struggling, and then that's able to turn sort of your emotion back on it, that you're able to laugh at something and move forward from it instead of continuing down a path where something it continues to get worse and worse and it continues to upset you more and more.
Yeah, I think it goes for so many things. As Françoise says, we're in the UK. We are very self-deprecating. We do take the mickey out of ourselves a lot, and but many of the best comedians do. And if we look at films and comedy, going back to black and white films, Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
It was always when he was doing something funny and falling over, and that sort of slapstick are the things that we laugh at. Those things, they make us laugh.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those awful situations, you have to sort of, as you said, kind of go, well, where am I going to go with this? Am I going to retreat into myself and be terribly upset about the whole thing, or I'm just going to find something good in it, something that's going to make me feel better? If I'm quite clumsy, if I fall down, which happens a lot, and nursing a broken foot right now.
That is under the table, everyone who is watching. You can't see that, but yes, it's broken.
Sort of appreciated that nobody laughs until I've laughed. I don't want to be the one on the floor and everyone's laughing at me. So there's that kind of, we have to make those calls about each other as well. And I think that can be quite hard for young people to do, to judge that situation, because we laugh because we're embarrassed as well sometimes. And I think young people do that a lot, the reaction.
I think laughing is a great coping mechanism. It kind of like takes you out of the worst situation or the most embarrassing situation, or sometimes even the best situation that you don't really want to be part. You just laugh. And it's good. It's a very powerful tool, and I think people need to recognize that. It's really good. But, I always think that if someone isn't ready to laugh about their situation, or is not there yet, or if maybe that's just not their thing, they might be more sensitive, or they might want to deal with stuff in a different way, that's totally cool as well. Like, we don't have to always all be the same. That'd be really boring. So thank God for that. We are all different. And I think for me anyway, laughing is a great thing, and I laugh all the time, and I can't be serious 2 minutes. But I appreciate that sometimes people are not in the same way, then you just have to adapt sometimes, which is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, a big suggestion we'll say is when we do have some young people who they view their humor with a lot of humor, because they'll say, I can't get through living an entire life with a chronic illness or disability and the way that people interact with me unless I laugh at it, because that's the only way I can then get people to ask me questions and educate them more, and I'm more empowered with my own health, is if I laugh and get people to feel comfortable. But we'll always say, we always like to say, your first commentary should always be empathetic, and then try and bring a little humor in second. If when you're meeting someone and you start off right with a joke, tends not to go well all the time. I've had that many of occasions where people would think the best way to bring support to me was the first thing they said was making a joke about my physical illness, whether it was affecting my extremities where I couldn't write exactly with my left hand since I'm left-handed, and they would see me trying to write with my right hand, and first impression was making a joke about my health, and then I would sort of look and go, okay, well, that's not the first thing we should be saying to me, but I appreciate the attempt of a joke. So they would then sort of lead in and go, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought it was funny, I don't really know what to say. And that's always really where we'll always gauge with young people, is they'll always end up saying, I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I feel like if I'm just funny about it, maybe that works. So we'll always, like you had both said as well, is you have to kind of know your audience, know who you're speaking to, because some people do want to just, their health or their struggles are sort of a separate entity. They kind of like to keep it as a different part of their life and not their whole life. So they want to look at it with humor, or they do look at it with a lot of serious tone. So it really does kind of depend on the person, but it can be very empowering to yourself to look at it with a light tone, as well as others around you to also look at the situation and find the humor in something that they can't control a lot of the times. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know sort of going off of that, we can go into our fourth segment, which is one of my personal favorites. So we're going to go into what's in your toolkit.
What's in your toolkit? What's in your toolkit?
What's in your toolkit is one of INVISIYOUTH'S very favorite segments, because we love a good tip sheet or a life hack, as pretty much this entire show is about. So we love to make life more accessible, more adaptive, more inclusive, and we love to have our guests talk about different sort of tips and advice that they can give that we should all be putting in our toolkit for daily life. So that's where we are going to be going now. So I'm going to talk to Zoe and Françoise about different sort of things they would add to a life toolkit on mental wellness. So I was going to ask the both of you, what things would you really suggest, from apps to different activities, even actual like physical products, that you guys think are really good life toolkits for young people to have to help them with daily life?
I can give you a few. There's so many apps out there, so many that are really, really good ones, and some you don't really understand. I think it's just about finding the ones that really talk to you. So mindfulness and meditation is great, but it might not be for you, and that's okay if it's not for you. I know it's all the crave right now. We all like meditate and we all do yoga and all do those things. It might not be your thing. Totally fine if it's not. You might be someone that likes shouting on top of a hill or shouting in the forest instead of meditate quietly in a room. That's totally fine as well. I think it's all about finding the right thing for you. But one little exercise that actually usually everyone could do and is actually really good, it's the breathing exercise. Because we all breathe, otherwise we wouldn't be here, but we don't really mind our breathing so much. And just focusing on that for a few seconds, not even thinking of more than that, just focusing on your breathing can really soothe you and really calm you and focus you on what you're doing, especially if you're having a bad moment. But yeah, I think I'm all about self-care and self-love, and really taking care of your body externally as well as internally. So all the things that I think everyone talks about, for me very much is good food could really help you feel good about yourself internally and externally. But good food needs to be good for the nutrients, but also good enjoyable food. So if you don't like broccoli, don't eat broccoli. Find something green that you like, but don't force yourself. So I think for me it's more about those little things. So definitely breathing exercise, finding the stress relief thing that actually works for you, could be anything, and good food. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. No, and I love that. Real quick, I just love that you mentioned that, because a big thing we'll always hear is the meditation sort of craze of always being told there's so many apps that help with meditation or calming, but a lot of young people immediately will say, well, I can't shut my mind off for an hour or a half hour or learn to meditate that quickly. And so we've always suggested sort of breathing techniques where it is short. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is something that a lot of young adults will be able to grab onto quite quickly. Is it's not learning an entire meditative process, but it is something that you just focus on for about 15 or 20 seconds, and then you can move on. And it really does sort of benefit you moving forward, just sort of having that quick focus on your breathing and then moving back into what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think we try to encourage a hobby of some kind, something that you wouldn't normally do as well, because it feels like more of an indulgence. It doesn't have to be things that cost a lot. It can be something that's totally free. I like to get a sketchbook out and do some drawing. It's not something that I sit and do all day at work. It's something totally different, and it provides me with that sort of quiet space of mind. But I know that a lot of people benefit from just doing something that is like quite mundane, doing the laundry. That's kind of a form of mindfulness. If you can think about what you're doing while you're folding the laundry, go, whatever that might be. So find your own fit, I think, for your own hack.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Françoise had mentioned it before when you had mentioned, there's different, when you want to find humor, you'll look at to a YouTube channel that or videos that you can laugh with and that are funny to you. So I know a big thing that we'll always suggest is something that we'll call like a Refocused playlist. So we usually will encourage young people based on what are their biggest interests or likes, whether it's sports or TV chat shows or different comedies or dramas or even just music, different YouTubers. We'll have them put on different sort of refocus playlists of little 5 to 10 minute videos and build their own playlist of it, where if they need a moment to like recharge or regroup, or if they're having a struggle, they can take a step back, put on headphones or go onto their computer and then just sort of go onto their refocus playlist and pick a sport commentator video about their favorite football team and just sort of have 5 minutes where your brain sort of shifts off the focus and goes to a different topic, or listening to or watching a music video or looking at a morning chat show segment and watching people comment on a different topic that's sort of a little, like you said, more mundane and sort of not your daily norm for 5 or 10 minutes. And it does sort of regroup your brain and refocus you out of what was very stressful, and then you can kind of come back to it after. So we'll always encourage people to see what their biggest interests are and then sort of tailor a playlist for themselves based on that.
Yeah, I think music is really, really important as well. We encourage a lot of playlists actually to be created, and ran a campaign that suggested exactly that. What's your good mood playlist or whatever mood playlist? And we encourage people to make playlists about communicating with their partner as well. And so those things worked really, really well. And actually we saw a lot of young men getting involved in that, using music as a way to kind of de-stress or to think about things differently or to communicate with. And that worked really, really well. So yeah, music is a good one, I think.
Yeah, do you either of you guys have like a top musician that you'll just even in general really love listening to, or that's been really a key musician through life with either of you?
Oh wow,
That's a big question.
So many. I don't know. I feel like the very first albums I've ever bought when I was a teenager really like stuck with me and kind of like informed the choices that I've made so far. So it was all about Radiohead and Nirvana when I was a kid, and it just stuck. And I think everything I love is kind of like a version of those two bands. So yeah.
You had such good taste.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
I'm similar actually. It has to be sort of the first things that I grew up listening to, and So the Cure, the Smiths, Joy Division, lots of that. And you're right. You do sort of evolve your taste off those memories as
For
well.
sure.
Yeah.
But I think, both of us, and I think everyone at the mix, and most people I know in my life are all massive music heads, and it's not for, it's for a good reason. I think music follows you everywhere you go, and it's part of your life. If you're sad, you listen to music. If you're happy, you listen to music. You go to a party, there's music, and I think that could really help. Including this aspect into taking care of yourself, like really listening to good music at the right time, that could really help potentially.
Yeah. We always, one of our biggest pieces of advice, we say when exam stress or any stressed moments and things, we always sort of wheel out the one that is just relax and have a bath. Literally waste a bit of water, and have a bath. Indulge yourself. It's something like that. You're not going to get in and out of bath in 2 seconds. I don't think. Once you're in, you might. Well, you might be. Once you're in, you might actually just lie there for a little bit. That's quite it.
No, absolutely. I just had a mental flash of an episode of Friends where Chandler got into Monica's bath that she prepared for herself, and it became his new obsession to calm down after work. So I just had the mental image of Chandler Bing in my head from that one, and I was like, well, he looked really calm throughout that whole episode.
Loved it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I love that, because I always, music is so important, even with the charity, for people that we love to work with, that we have a band that sponsors the charity, and his music and how he's been really able to sort of tap into his emotional side, like you said, as men as well. He's always really encouraged that with his own music. He'll be really supportive in talking about what his music has meant to him, and even just writing music that has worked well, and listening to other people's music. That's always been really a big sort of tool for him as a musician, and then also that we'll encourage a lot of young people to do as well, is just sort of find other styles of music that you might even not really like, and just sort of listening and looking to that, and just kind of going in the opposite direction of what is your style. I'm a huge Elvis Presley fan. I've been since I was 6 or 7, which obviously in 1st or 2nd grade is a little bizarre to be listening to Elvis Presley in comparison to the other kids, but it worked for me, and I still do. So that was definitely, and then even having a physical chronic illness, that's what we'll always say too, is just sort of being able to go to physical therapy and have my physiotherapist say, what music do you want while we're doing different exercises. It was a big sort of mental shift away from what was physically very painful and were physical treatments to my health. I was able to sort of try and focus on the music and focus on lyrics, and then keep my mind away from what was physically going on. So it was a big sort of it was a big tool for me, and that will always encourage a lot of young people with physical illnesses or disabilities and treatment programs that they're going through, whether in hospital or outpatient, because it does help you sort of shift your mental focus away from what's physically going on in your health as well. So that's really been a key for us too.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we're going to go into our final segment with the both of you, and this is probably obviously a very good way to end the show on this note. So we're going to do Path to Power.
Path to Power.
Okay, guys, with Path to Power, we get to discuss different moments and how-tos for teaching young adults how to own their health journey, as we say, whether it's physical or mental health or life struggles that they're dealing with. We want young adults to empower themselves, be their best advocates, and have as much power that they can harness in their daily life, so that they can really have power in each day that they create. So I want to ask you both, what are some different steps that you've been able to help with young people, or that you've seen young people grab onto in order to gain some personal strength when they're dealing with a very hard time?
Well, in my work at the Mix, I work a lot with young ambassadors, actually, who have either benefited from the Mix as a service user, or they volunteered at the Mix for a certain reason, or they have some kind of link to the Mix. And what I see with those young people is that they really own their stories and they want to share it to the world, and that's their way to find strength and power and really kind of own their story and be able to, be themselves and fully themselves, and not hiding a part of themselves, thinking, yeah, I'm okay with 75% of me. This 25, no, not no, it's 100%. I'm all the colors. I'm fully there. And I've had the chance to really work with amazing young people who, had this willingness of wanting to chat about their stories and wanted to really share those very important moments of their life to empower other young people, but felt a little bit shy and didn't really know what they wanted to do, how to come across. And working with them, really empowering them by just literally just explaining to them that they had the power to do whatever they wanted with their story, and just to say that to them, that it was theirs to tell or not to tell. Like, they could tell anything about it. They don't have to, as I always say, they don't have to be completely naked in front of the media for them to have a good story. Their story is amazing already. So, they do whatever they want. And really just explaining to them that, they're already strong and they are already an amazing person, that really helped them develop. And you could really see, night to day with them. Sometimes it's been really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll say, even going off of that, a big thing that we'll say in terms of like empowering yourself is obviously I'm the founder of a nonprofit and you guys work for a nonprofit, so we'll say volunteering all the time is a very key way, but that's been something we'll always encourage for young people if they want to be more empowered with their own health journey, if they want to empower themselves, and then pay it forward and empower other people, finding other nonprofits that you can work with, that you can, like, you have youth ambassadors, that like we have global brand leaders, that they are able to really sort of take a role in the nonprofit and really do a lot of good work, empower other people and empower themselves, and doing it in a way that works for them, whether it's being very public about their stories and really using that platform to better other people and themselves, and then other times volunteering more in the background and on the sidelines, where you're getting a lot of goodwill for yourself and doing a lot of good work, but not so much sort of being front and center on the camera, but you're still gaining a lot of benefits of empowering yourself too. Doing that sort of philanthropic work in different ways for young people can be such a sort of soul-feeding process. So that's something we'll always really encourage as well.
Yeah, I would agree totally. I know that the feedback that we get from our young ambassadors and our volunteers, we've got, I think, a couple of hundred volunteers with the mix, and a huge percentage of them are under 30. And, wow. I think that kind of near-to-peer support that they can give, they've been through things themselves and actually now are ready to give something back, to talk about their experiences. Yeah, you're right. I think they do find strength when they've finished doing that piece of work, and actually, to have something like that on the CV and to learn those soft skills and to take that forward as well, it's very, very important. Yeah.
I think you're totally right. You don't have to be extremely vocal to become, the leader of a movement and, have a million followers on social media to actually tell your story. Sometimes you might just want to be on a helpline directly talking to someone who's been struggling and doing that in a more discreet and private way, and it's totally fine. Once again, it's all about knowing yourself and what you want to do, but definitely giving back. We've seen anywhere at the mix that giving back once you get better is definitely a great way to empower yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know a big thing that you guys work with, like we had mentioned in the beginning, is you do work with any sort of challenge that life throws at young people, and sort of giving them the tools and access to be able to tackle those problems and be empowered with them. So how do you guys really feel that in terms of power in that regard? They will always say a lot of young people give the struggles in their life so much power over them because it does affect their life so much. So what are different ways that you guys would suggest young adults sort of diminish the power that these life struggles put onto them?
I think that, yeah, you're right. it's very, very easy to be sort of swallowed up into that dark hole and to lose sight of the light and the positive that you have. And I think being able to look at the things, even the things that you don't think are going well, that you're not happy with, and being able to say, but hang on a minute, I'm the only person that can change this. So it's understanding the power you have over yourself. Of course, there are some factors that you can't change, and you can't change immediately, or sometimes not at all, but take ownership of the things that you can change and get to really, really know yourself, and that you are in full control of everything that's going on here. There's relying on other people to get well is sometimes absolutely what you have to do, but there could be some changes that you can make, not to be not to keep going further and further into that hole.
I think there's also a way to not define yourself by your struggles. So like, you are not your mental health issues, you are not your physical health issues, you're a person experiencing loads of different things, but you are not this particular illness. That's not you. So knowing that and actually putting some distance between the bad things that could happen to you and actually who you are actually gives you more power over them, and it's easier to deal with them in that way, rather than say, I am the depression, I am this, or I am that, because that's horrible, and you feel very small and kind of powerless in front of that, because those issues are extremely heavy and hard to deal with. So like, just trying to remember that you are your own person and those issues don't define yourself is pretty good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know that's a big thing that we'll always tackle with young adults, is that they're because of especially dealing with a chronic illness or a disability, a lot of times the entire scope of how you physically function in life is defined by your health. How other people can interact with you, how you can interact with the world, how it's set up physically, it defines the way they are. But I always say it's similar to opening up a dictionary and looking at the definition of a word. There's about 5 different explanations or synonyms to each sort of definition of a term, and that's sort of how people are themselves. It's one factor of your definition, and it does define you, but it's not the sole definition. So if you give so much power to the first thing on your description list, you're sort of not giving enough power to the rest of yourself as a whole person. So that's able to really, like you both said, realize what you can actually, even the smaller elements of what you can change, even the tiniest elements of your daily life that you have control to change, and work on those and not focus on all of the things that you still cannot control or the things that you still need assistance with. Because if you focus on what you can do and what you have power in, it gives the things that you cannot control less power sort of in your day to day.
Yeah. And don't compare yourself to other people as well. Everybody's individual, and everything that you've got going on is, you own that yourself. It's individual to you, and it's great to draw strength from other people that understand and that can empathize and that you can communicate with. But you're still your individual self, and don't compare everything that you're doing or going through, with everything else that other people are talking about. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of the work that you guys do is virtually, as we do with INVISIYOUTH. So I know social media tends to be a big thing that will say people either become very empowered by it, or it starts to, like they say, start to compare other people on social media that they're following or they see. So what are different ways that you guys have really been able to suggest to young people to sort of stop that comparison if they feel like it's sort of hurting their self-esteem, or if they are becoming so empowered by other people and not themselves? What are different tips that you would have in the social media realm of empowerment?
Well, we just launched a campaign actually a couple of weeks ago called Summer Unfiltered, and that was basically the idea behind the campaign, is that summer is particularly hard time because we have the highest expectation to have the best of the times, and everyone on social media is on a beach or having the best time or having the greatest experience. They're at this festival, they're really high somewhere else, whatever, like they're all doing crazy stuff, and you might be stuck at home because you don't have the means to do anything, or you might be in a student job that you don't like, or you might be studying because unfortunately you still have to. There's loads of different things, and the media don't portray summer as it is. It's just this crazy 2 months where everyone's having fun.
Yeah.
It's not true, obviously. So this campaign is very much about kind of removing the filter around summer and allowing people to have the summer that they're having and just owning that, having a good time or a bad time, having a particularly crazy experience or not so much. Whatever they're experiencing, it's fine. And it's all about very much enjoying your life as it is, which I know sometimes can be quite hard because we all go through highs and lows, and but it's all about thinking that we only have one life and that's the one we live in. It doesn't matter what other people are doing on social media. We all know anyway that everything that we put on social media is highly edited, and people wouldn't put their really shit day on Instagram, for instance. So it's all about that, raising awareness and not making people feel bad because they might not have the craziest summer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know, kind of even going off of that, we'll always say a lot of young people, similarly to social media, they like sort of the instant gratification of change. So even when it's with school, knowing their grades right away and being able to sort of get that feedback right away, social media immediately getting likes or comments on photos. But we always will sort of jokingly say, going off of that the best social media accounts, it takes them quite a long time to filter and edit and their photos and captions. So, you can't get instant gratification when the best people on Instagram take 25-30 minutes to figure out what is the best hashtag to add. Maybe that's just me taking 30 minutes to figure out what to put in a caption when I have to help our social media team because I'm not that crafty. So that might be it as well, but sort of knowing that instant gratification a lot of the times is not always going to be the most sort of empowering or self-fulfilling, that things take time, and sort of knowing that whole long process at the end of it, you're like, wow, I put a lot of work into this and put a lot of work into myself, and you can look at the journey over weeks or months and go and say, wow, that I should really pat myself on the back for that because I really put in a lot of good work and other people supported me and I took a lot of initiatives, and that's something that you should be proud of.
Yeah, I think absolutely hit the nail on the head with that, definitely. It's hard. I think sometimes our world is very hard to be proud of the small achievements that we do. And, I was once asked whether there are a lot of unreasonable expectations on young people. Do you think people expect a lot of young people? And I said, I think young people expect a lot of themselves.
Yeah.
Actually, that's where a lot of the pressures come from. You all of a sudden, if you're on social media and you've got so many likes on one tweet or one Instagram picture, then that's what you strive for then, and everything else is a failure. That's just putting so much pressure on ourselves every day to keep performing, to keep being at this level, and actually who's to judge what that level is? We need to take some ownership back, and young people definitely need to say, I'm achieving, I'm doing great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a big thing, is just sort of giving yourself the personal pat on the back for the smallest things in life. We'll always say if you get very hyper excited for the very small win, it makes the bigger wins seem even more exciting. So even just sort of like the day to day, we'll say find at the end, every day might not be a fantastic day, but you can find one thing each day that you would get really excited about. We had one youth that's what she did with her chronic illness. Every day she would find even the most simple thing of I was able to get out of bed and I could feel both of my legs. I stood up and I walked, and that was the only good thing that happened to me the entire day. Everything else just went south the entire day. She went, I did that and that worked out well, and she went, congrats to me, and I gave myself a high five before I went to bed. And that was her sort of win for the day. But she always said, it's just stop being we will always say it's so easy said than done, is just stop being so hard on yourself. But at the same token, it is just that simple of advice, is just to stop being so hard on yourself at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that definitely. I know that's a something we wanted to kind of going off of that sort of on an ending note with this segment is a lot of the work that you guys do is a lot of advocacy and encouraging young people to do advocacy work. So how do you guys find that being super empowering for young people, or how would you encourage young people to get involved in advocacy work?
I think young people, and I mean most people, when they disagree with something, they obviously want to make change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think advocacy is the best way to do that, because as a person on your own, you won't be able to make much change, especially if you think of like big issues. But if you join a movement or if you join a charity that will actually have a bit more leverage, then you can really feel that you're making change and you're really having a positive impact. So I think that would be my only kind of advice that I would give. If you feel this kind of burning thing inside of you and you feel like something is unfair, or you feel like you want to change things and you feel you're too small, there are definitely loads of other people in the world that feel the same way. And if you get all together and people are getting together to change things, then you've got the leverage to do so. So yeah, it's all about recognizing that kind of feeling and finding the right people to associate with, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, organisations like INVISIYOUTH, they're to make a change, they're to involve as many people as you can within that change. And I think that's really empowering. I think to be a tiny part of that, is fantastic for any young person to think I've been part of that change, that broader sort of spectrum that we're trying to make a difference in. I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And then knowing, especially even with you guys as well, it's something that's what we've loved, being able to get to know the mix and working with you guys too, is that you have so many different options, that it's not just sort of a one size fits all advocacy style, that people can come to you that want to do more writing, that want to do physical volunteer work, that want to be part of advocacy campaigns, or hosting events with you guys, or being parts of runs that you guys have teams with. Or fundraising campaigns that you have. So there's lots of ways of being an advocate that's sort of hone in on your personal style and interest, and that's really where we'll encourage young people too, is just knowing what you love doing the most, or that you have the most fun with, or that your friends would have the most fun with, and then going to a charity and saying, hey, this is what we like to do and I want to be a part of your movement, but how can we fit into the different projects that you have going on? And 9 times out of 10, every charity, I know we will, and I know you guys will too, you always have different ways to get young people involved, and there's lots of roles that somebody can play.
Whether it's volunteering or whether it's just contributing to giving us feedback on our next campaign, telling us how you feel about different things, and looking at it from, because we have a lot of young staff, we have a lot of volunteers, as I said, but that's a group that work together a lot. We want to broaden that. We want more experiences. We want to get more advice from the young people out there on what we should be doing.
Yeah.
We don't create everything, and come up with all the ideas. We look at what's going on, and we're told time and time again what to do by young people, and co-create all of our services with them. And there is always an opportunity to get involved with that, and to play a massive part in the movement of the mix, definitely. Yeah. All of our opportunities are on the website. And there are emails on there if you want to send an email of had an idea about something, get that in and we look at everything.
Yeah,
for sure. And even social media is a very easy and classic way to get in touch with us. We're not just, we're a digital charity, so social media is one of the main things that we do. It's not just a way to push things out. We actually want to have conversations, and we definitely want to hear about what young people are experiencing or are feeling, or if, we put something out there they don't feel it's quite right, just give us feedback, and we'll definitely take that into consideration. It's always really important for us to actually have those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going off of that too, sort of ending the segment too on that note, is really that young people's voices do matter. A lot of young adults feel like they're not old enough, as they say, to make actual change or for people to actually listen. But to hear organizations like INVISIYOUTH and like the Mix say, we build things based off of what you're telling us or what we see that you need, and we then want to make it and adapt it to the best way that we can support you, that your voice actually matters in tailoring the project project. That's the biggest thing for young people to really get at, is that their voice just actually has the most power of just making a statement. That's sort of the biggest powerful statement you can make.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is sort of a good, like I said, it's a good ending note. So this is the end of our episode with Zoe and Françoise from The Mix. So before we end, we like to let our guests tell you where that you can find them on social media. I know Françoise mentioned a little bit about their summer campaign, but before we do that, we just have a little announcement that is INVISIYOUTH related that we want to tell all of you guys. And obviously, since The Mix is a UK charity and they are in London and England and across the country, we feel like this is a perfect time to mention it. So INVISIYOUTH is for the second year in a row a partner with the Superhero Series event in Windsor, in London, outside of London, obviously, in August, and we have charity teams competing with us in an adaptive triathlon. So adaptive sports are a huge thing that we love to encourage young people to get involved in with any sort of illness or disability, and being supportive of those things. So in August, we have charity teams of young people that are physiotherapists, that are trampoliners, that are adaptive athletes, and their families competing for INVISIYOUTH and fundraising for us, so we can continue building more virtual programs, that we can continue hosting more free events for you guys in all of the different cities and countries that we work in. So we would love for you guys to get to know our teams even more and their stories, and why adaptive sports means so much to them. And please encourage you guys to share the crowdfunding page that they've built, that they can reach their fundraising goal before the event in the middle of August. So we're going to have a link pop up below that you guys can then check out the team on our end. And then I know Françoise mentioned the summer campaign that in The Mix has going on, but I want you guys to let everyone know where our listeners and viewers can find both of you, find The Mix online, and then also where they can find your summer campaign that you have going on too.
Yeah, for sure. So the Mix website is themix.org.uk. Pretty easy to find. I'm sure if you type The Mix UK, you'll find it as well. All our social media channels are The Mix UK. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I think everything is The Mix UK. So it's pretty easy. And if you want to get in touch with us, we have an email address, which is info@themix.org.uk. As I said, I think social media is definitely the way forward. If you want to connect, that's absolutely cool.
And all the information about the summer campaign is online as well.
Yeah, on all the social media channels.
Yeah, absolutely. We just saw one of the first posts that you guys had with Summer Unfiltered on it, and it was really fantastic. We had a couple of our volunteers reading it. They passed it on to me. So you guys started off with a really good sort of bang in the campaign for the summer. So we really encourage people to check out their social media and see the campaign and get involved and support it as well. So like I always say, I'm Dominique from INVISIYOUTH, and you guys can find INVISIYOUTH Charity on all of our social media, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @INVISIYOUTH. And you can please subscribe to this video podcast on our YouTube channel, or on all of our podcast networks, which our channels are on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Castbox. There will continue to be more. You can keep following us there and listen and watch all of these episodes as well. You can subscribe, rate, give a thumbs up. I'm pretty sure on iTunes you can only give a 5-star with our channel, so that is all we can have. So we want to again thank Zoe and Françoise for being a part of this episode, to really sort of bookmark the end of this first themed group of episodes the best way possible. I always say that one of my personal favorite charities before I even launched INVISIYOUTH 3 years ago, The Mix was one of the very first charities that I found over in the UK that really stood out to me before I even launched INVISIYOUTH. So the work that they've been doing has been something I was so eager to get INVISIYOUTH to get to work with, and for us to continue working with them and supporting their work is really important for us. So definitely keep checking them out. We're so thankful to have the both of you on our show. It's really been fantastic and a lot of fun too. So thank you both very much.
Thanks, Dominique.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Of course. And then we are going to see you guys in a couple weeks when we start our new theme. So definitely check out our social media when we announce what that will be for the next 3 months. And I will see and listen to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.